welcome to another episode of Hopinions, where each week we chat about what's been going on in the industry, share our opinions, and of course drink some beer. We were just chatting before the show, mate. We've not really got much to talk about, have we, in terms of what we've drunk this last week?
No, in terms of beer, bugger all. Really, for me.
Yeah, pretty much the same for me. Two things of note. One, I did an interesting semi-walking pub tour around some lesser-known pubs in Leeds last week, and that was with Gaz from the Tap Lens podcast, and that's all I'm going to say about that for now, because that episode will be coming out as part of his season 2 of the Tap Lens podcast, so keep your ears out for that one. And the other thing was I went to a Thornbridge tap takeover while I was in Leeds as well, and tried a few Thornbridge beers that I had before. So nothing really to shout about, really.
Yeah, like I said, I've had beer, but I've just got nothing to tell anyone else about.
Have we been in a bit of a post-Indie Man slump, do you think?
I think that's probably it. Whatever I tried just wasn't living up to it.
Absolutely. I think sometimes you can be a little bit guilty of that, can't you, after having a really good time, and then all of a sudden you've got nothing to follow up.
Yeah.
Should we just crack on then to the news?
I think that's a great idea.
Chat about that. Should we open a beer first?
Yeah.
So we're doing a couple of beers this week, and I'm not going to reveal what they both are just yet, because that's going to form part of tonight's discussion. So as you would have heard, I've just opened a can for our first beer. We'll share what this one is. This is we're starting off this week with Adnams dry hopped lager. So this comes in a 330ml can, now available from Tesco's, for 169 of your well-earned pennies.
Or 169 cents from euros. On a basic 1-to-1 conversion at the moment.
Absolutely. So, cheers, mate.
Cheers.
Well, that's quite light, isn't it?
Yeah, light and refreshing.
Yeah, there's a few light flavours banging around in it, but it's nothing to write home about, really, in terms of what's going on in there. It's just a nice easy lager to start the proceedings.
Yeah, not too gassy, not too fizzy. I do prefer it on keg though.
Okay, I've this is only my second time trying it. I've never tried it on keg because I tried it when it was available in the bottle and I didn't really enjoy it in the bottle. I didn't think it worked. So as a result of that, I've always kind of avoided drinking it again. So this might make me go back and try a pint of it, actually.
Okay, yeah, you should do. I mean, the local Adnams pubs to me in Colchester all have it on keg, and I enjoy it. Most
spoons now as well, I think.
Oh, do they?
A lot of spoons I've been in recently have got it on keg as well. Certainly one at the Hamilton Hall at Liverpool Street. It's on keg.
Oh, I hadn't noticed it
in there. Okay. Anyway, let's crack into the news. So because we've got quite a bit of news to get through this week, and I know we've both got some actual opinions on some of the news as well this week. So first one, we're going stateside for the first part of this week's news. So first news this week was about Stone Brewing Co. Issuing an official statement on layoffs that they've made to their business. So they've had to lay off about 5% of their team members, who were all offered substantial notice and career transition services. But they then go on to cite in their press release that the onset of greater pressures from Big Beer as a result of their acquisition strategies and the further proliferation of small hyper-local breweries has slowed growth. But they do go to some lengths to reiterate on a number of occasions during this release that Stone remains one of the largest, if not the largest, employers in the craft brewing segment. Now, I know when we was talking about this earlier, you've got some views on that one, mate.
Yeah, I found it a strange press release. I mean, obviously working in the banking industry, which is what I do, listeners, don't hold that against me, please.
As our listenership drops right off.
Sorry about that. You did tell me not to mention. But obviously I see a lot of these sort of press releases now, both within my own company and outside of it, and it was a strange way of wording it. It was like they were trying to really balance up between justification for doing it and still trying to please people who perhaps, investors I wasn't aware until recently they did have quite a bit of private equity investors behind them, and also trying to keep that feel-good craft factor that we all have. We have a certain amount of love for our favourite craft breweries, and especially for one as well established as Stone. So I found the release a bit strange, and also the comment about substantial notice and transition training. Quite frankly, I don't know if it matters how much notice you get when you're going to be made redundant.
Yeah.
I mean, you're still being made redundant. I think, obviously the laws are different in the States as well, with redundancy packages, because for a lot of companies, you will get some form of transition training anyway. It'll be almost like a standard over here for a lot of companies. So, and the notice period, again, depending on what sort of industry you work in, for some people in the banking industry, you're told you're made redundant at 9 o'clock, you've left the building by 9:05. So I found a lot of the wording a bit odd, but it'd be interesting to see what sort of feedback they get. I did see a few bits on Twitter, and there was a few comments being made, so I imagine they'll weather the storm and people will still buy Stone beer, to be honest.
Should they have expanded, do you think? Should they have expanded to Europe?
Well, maybe
could that be a factor in this?
Well, but again, if you're looking at it as a business, if they've expanded, then presumably there was a business case for doing it, whether they're expanding internally in the States or externally in Europe, where they've opened up in Berlin. Then there must have been a plan. And that plan shouldn't have had such a fine margin on it that Big Beer, I mean, they've been around for over 20 years now, Stone. It's not as if they haven't come across Big Beer before, in the States especially. I mean, there isn't anyone bigger than the Big Beer in the States. So, and then throwing a bit about your very local breweries as well. It's like, well, you're blaming startups, which is what you were once as well. It was just, like I said, the wording was just really strange. It felt like it was a bit rushed, and perhaps wasn't put out, maybe not put out by the right people, potentially. It's strange is where I'm going to be at on that one at the moment.
Okay, well, let's look at some news from another US brewery this week. So this one's coming from the 12th largest craft brewery in the States, Brooklyn.
We're very specific on our numbers tonight, aren't we?
We are, yeah. But again, that's from the press release. Yeah. It was part of the press release that I highlighted because I don't know why they would want to go to lengths to highlight that they were the 12th biggest craft brewery in the States.
Who are the other 11?
Well, Stone, Sierra Nevada. Yeah, answers on a postcard or on a tweet.
Yeah, on a tweet. Otherwise, showing our age again.
But this was the news that they've sold a minority stake of the business to Japanese Kirin. So they've sold 24.5% of their stake.
That's a rather specific number. Is there any reason for only the 24.5%?
I think we all know what that reason is. Because it keeps them under the threshold of 25%, which means they can retain their craft status as part of the US Brewers Association, because they've only sold 24.5%. They cite in the press release that it's going to give them new distribution channels abroad, and the standard sort of things that you now expect to see from these press releases. Interestingly, again, within minutes, Brewdog were having an opinion on this.
I did see Brewdog's opinion about it. Well, I can't say I've seen much Brooklyn sold in Brewdog bars I've been into.
I can't, no. I mean, Brooklyn feels like it's become a very mainstream
very
beer.
Mainstream, especially with the Brooklyn Lager.
Yeah.
I mean, that feels very mainstream these days.
No real surprise there then?
No, really. No. Again, press release with all those very specific numbers. Again, the 24.5% justifying under the 25% of craft. Saying they're the 12th largest. That was an odd one to say. You would, if you were in the top 10, you'd say top 10. Maybe top 20. 12 is a very specific number to use as an example in your press release.
On the theme of numbers, going to our third stateside news release this week. So this one's from Sierra Nevada, who in their press release talk about there being nearly 5,000 craft breweries in the United States. They are releasing 2 new beers in Q1 next year. So first one is Sidecar Orange Pale Ale, which is perfect to complement Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, made with orange peel and bold citrus heavy hops, 35 ABUs and 5.3%. And the other one, which is probably more exciting to me in particular, is the Tropical Torpedo IPA. So using the hop torpedo, they're able to control how much hop aroma is infused into the beers. Tropical Torpedo IPA is going to feature no additional fruits, and it's all going to be from the extracts of the hops, coming in at 6.7% ABV and 55 IBUs. I'm just wondering if we'll see either of those beers in the UK in any state that you would want to drink them in. That's my only concern.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to try both of them, to be honest.
Yeah, I would.
But whether, like you say, whether we'll get them as they're intended to be is another matter.
Yeah, the Tropical Torpedo sounds amazing.
I quite like the sound of the Orange Pale Ale.
Okay.
Yeah, so yeah, I would love to try them.
Let's come a little bit closer to home for the next couple of bits of news. So this week, Northern Monk announced what they're calling the Trilogy, which seems to be a series of beers that they've brewed with a series of collaborations with breweries from around the world, each focusing on a different ingredient of the beer. So the first one was brewed with Epic from New Zealand, and the focus is on hops. Epic obviously are very well known for making massively hop beers in New Zealand, and that will be an IPA. Unsurprisingly, if you're going to throw hops at something, you're probably going to get an IPA at the other end of it. They've also done one with Demolen, where the focus will be on the malt, and that will be an Imperial Porter. And they've also, the third one they've done is with Cigar City, brewing from Tampa in the States, and the focus there is on the yeast, and that will be a Belgian Tripel that they're brewing. So no other details at the moment about how they might be available, what sort of packaging they're going to be in, when they're going to be available, but that's certainly one to keep your eye out for.
They all sound like they're going to be big beers though.
They do all sound like they're going to be big beer. Imperial Porter, that's going to be what, 8-9%. India Pale Ale, they're probably going to push that to the upper limits, and then a Tripel.
Yeah, that's going to be upwardly mobile on the single numbers
easily. Yeah. And then the other news this week coming from Cloudwater about exciting news possibly around their future double IPA releases. So they've announced that they'll be releasing double IPAs, a new double IPA every month now. On the first Saturday of the month, they'll be releasing new double IPAs, and within the blog they also spoke about how they were going to be using eBrea to ensure they get the beers to people brewery fresh as well. So this means we're going to be seeing lots more V's on Cloudwater bottles.
Will this be the bottles or the cans, or will you have a choice?
I think they're going to be moving to canning exclusively on them, and I think it will be 440ml cans. So it means you're getting a bit more for your money. But obviously that's probably going to come at a premium as well, because you're going to have to pay a little bit more.
Yeah, exactly.
As well. But I suppose that's only one that we can really keep our eye on.
Yeah. So what do you think?
The jury's out for me on it. I've got to admit, I'm becoming a little bit tired with their endless releasing of double IPAs. While I love the style, I'm also a big fan of being able to go back to a beer and enjoy it time and time again. With it constantly changing, I'm not sure how I feel about it at the moment.
Yeah, again, like you said, it's a little bit of a wait and see, but once a month, it almost sounds a bit marketing gimmicky. At first listening to it.
As I say, I think only time will tell, and I think I'm going to put this out there now. I think within the next couple of weeks, we will see an offer emerge from eBrea that's almost like the Dipper Club or something like that, where you can buy a 12-month subscription and be guaranteed to get 4 cans or bottles or whatever of the new release once a month for a certain price. I think that will come as part of this.
Yeah, I think you could possibly be right. I mean, they've obviously gone exclusive with EBrea. EBrea do a very good job of getting the beers out. I can't deny that.
Absolutely, yeah.
You know, they do get them out very quickly. I've had some very good experiences with EBrea. I'm just not sure about this once a month bit.
Well, like I say, only time will tell,
Yeah.
and if there's a dip in quality, but it enables them to stick to their guns in terms of releasing beers that are seasonally fresh.
True, but there's only 4 seasons.
There is, and how much of that is going to change? Yeah,
and they tend to combine the seasons, spring and summer and winter and autumn anyway. So once a month, that means we've got 12 seasons all of a sudden.
I think we'll come back to this one at some point actually, and revisit it, and after a few months maybe, and then give it some thoughts at that point.
Okay, you buy them, we'll taste them.
I'm not sure whether that's what I just agreed to. And then the final news story of this week very much takes us into this.
Opinions, 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 opinions.
So, Hofmeister are going to make a craft beer comeback. So, for those that are possibly as old as Martin and I, and maybe remember or have parents that remember this, Hofmeister was 3.2% ABV lager, produced by Scottish Courage in the 1980s. It was produced right up until 2003, which I found quite surprising.
If you told me, I probably would have guessed early 90s it died.
Yeah, I don't think I can ever remember drinking it. If it was during the 80s, I was literally just in my early teens in the 80s, so would probably explain why. But it was a brand that was successful largely due to the advert and the mascot of George the Bear.
Follow the bear.
Follow the bear, yeah. But all the history to one side, following obviously it not being around for 13 years now, the brand is coming back.
Interestingly put there, Steve. The brand is coming back.
The brand is coming back. It's coming back as a 5% ABV Helles lager that's going to be made in Bavaria by a 4th generation family owned brewery nestled on the edge of the Erzberger forest. The brand, to just focus on that again for a second, is now owned by a group of independent UK entrepreneurs. And they're going to be working with Marsden's PLC, and 330ml bottles and 50-litre key kegs will be available in bars nationwide from November 2016. So the bear is back.
But not as it was.
But it's a completely different beer.
It's a different beer.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't remember whether I had it or not. I remember the advert. I remember us selling it in the off-licence. Whether I tried it in the late 80s when I did start drinking the pubs, I honestly can't remember. It's not one which I particularly sticks out in my mind, but I remember the advert, and I know it was a lager, and I knew in the back of my mind I knew it was under 5%. So if it's coming back as a Helles lager at 5%, then it's a different beer. They're not bringing back the same beer. They're bringing back a brand.
They're bringing back a brand. They're putting that brand on a different beer. Yes, it might be 13 years between the last time we saw a can of Hofmeister and the new version, but as you rightly say, it's essentially a completely different beer.
Yeah.
So that fueled this week's poll, which I have to say wasn't the most popular poll that we've ever run, possibly because as Bob the Beer suggested, the poll might be showing an age bias on it.
It was. I have to admit, I didn't really think about it, but when I saw that, I have to admit, if you were under 35, there's a good chance you didn't know what the hell we're on about.
Especially the wording I used as well was, so Hofmeister is coming back as craft. Are you going to try it? And what other beers would you like to see make a comeback? And then the 3 options were Follow the Bear, Get Out of Town, or What the Fuck is Hofmeister? 135 votes, 38% of people went for What the Fuck is Hofmeister. So I think that probably just goes to show it. But on the second point, what I was trying to encourage to get out of people is, which other beers would you like to see make a comeback? So, and this is where we got some of the good comments this week. So Nate Southwood at NateDog27 wants to see Grain Brewery bring their Rye Pow back. Sheffield Pubs at Pub Sheffield, Tennant Brothers Queen's Owl. I mean, a lot of these mean nothing to me, I have to admit. Ben Brogden, Ben_BRG, Dark Star Over the Moon, or Bateman's Dark Mild. At Lugsy51, original strength Lowenbrow, or Looney Brew, as we used to call it. Andy Parker said flour was best bitter. And quite a few people suggested this next one as well. So Grandad Greg at Greg1954, bodies, the original bodies recipe before Whitbread got their hands on it. Gammon Baron wants to see Cask Punk come back. Well, you know, we've got Cask Dead Pony Club now, so never say never on that one. Miles Lambert wants to see the original 1927 recipe of Newcastle Brown Ale. Somebody had to throw it in there. Might be too soon for this one, but Phil Kite at the Great Cubby-O, has anyone said Dobber yet? And then I suppose to finish the comments this week, Justin Mason at 1970s Boy, it wasn't good the first time round, so don't see why this should be. It's an odd choice. What next? Double Diamond or John Ball Bitter? So that's what Twitter was thinking. We've obviously already shared our thoughts a little bit on the brand coming back. Are there any beers that you've had that have since been retired that you'd want to see brewed again?
Yeah, and I think this comes down to someone Rob from Hop Scene said in the States they do like nostalgia beers.
Yes, yeah, I saw that.
I don't really know much about it, so I might have to have a little bit of a look at that if I need to, unless Rob's going to send me a link about it, which would be really handy. But from my initial first drinking experience in pubs regularly with mates was in Tolly Cobble pubs in Ipswich, and I didn't drink real ale in those days, and I was diving in on a beer called Hansa, which was about £1 a pint, very golden, very fizzy, very cold, and if we were feeling like, you know, this was going to be a good night, we might step up to the Hansa Export, you know, which was in our heads. We were a bit harder then, drinking the Hansa.
Were those in the days of when export beer actually meant it was a good couple of percentages higher than the original beer?
Yeah. We were probably on 5% by that point.
Yeah.
So we were sessionable as it is now, and we were 5% then.
Yeah, absolutely.
I wouldn't expect much hope of actually knowing what it tasted like or if it was actually any good, but I wouldn't mind just with my palate now knowing what it was like. Another one I used to drink with my mates, especially if we ended up I think it was Hollywood's we ended up in Ipswich, was the Carlsberg Elephant, the one with the white neck, which was 7.5% if I remember correctly. I thought that had died, but I did have a little look, and that is still around. It's just it had a bit of a rebranding.
Yeah.
But for me, it'd probably be a Watney's. Watney's get 2 hits for me. One, the Party 7, because we used to sell it in the shop, and I was always amazed at these big cans, and also I couldn't work out how you opened them either. As a kid stacking the shelves with these, I had no idea how you could open these cans.
So again, answers on the tweet. If anybody's got any experience of a Party 7, please let Martin know how you actually get into one of the things. And
the other one would be Watney's Red Barrel, because being a long-time member of CAMRA, Watney's Red Barrel is held up as the evil person, the evil company, the evil beer that set CAMRA on its way. I'd just be curious to know what it did taste like, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, and a few people said that as well, because I think it's one of those things that's constantly referred to in blogs and literature. You know, that seems to be the point at which things started to go wrong.
Yeah. If one of these entrepreneurs who own the Hofmeister brand own other ones, then Watney's, with the amount of mentions it get, is almost a bit of a freebie.
It's got to be, isn't it? Yeah. I think for me, there's only really I've spent a good few days thinking about this as well, and I can only really think of one beer that I'd really like to see come back again, and that was a beer for me that when I first started really getting into my beers again a few years back, Adnams used to produce a beer called East Green, which was it was billed as a carbon neutral beer. I think it was released at around the time they released their new bottles that were more eco-friendly, and the beer had been brewed in such a way to keep carbon levels down. But it was just a really drinkable 4-point-something% pale ale, and I remember really enjoying it. In hindsight, I do wonder whether it was a bit of a predecessor for Ghost Ship though, because obviously it's now disappeared and there doesn't ever seem to be any intention of bringing that one back, and Ghost Ship being as popular as it is now.
Yeah, it'd be hard to see where it fit in there, wouldn't it?
It wouldn't fit into the range at all now. But I suppose that's, for me, it's just one of those beers that has got a real soft spot in my heart that I just really enjoyed drinking.
Yeah. Any curiosity beers though from the past? I mean, I like Miles' point about trying to, the 1927 version of Newcastle Brown Ale, and for me, I'd like to taste Guinness as it was supposed to be, not as like the XXX version which came out, which they said was in the 70s. If that was the version in the 70s, then goodness knows how it survived till now.
Yeah, I would probably be with you on that one. I'd like to try the original Guinness. I think you can get close to that with the foreign exports.
Yeah, I'd agree. In my head, that's what it was like.
And actually, I think I'd go with Miles a little bit as well. I wouldn't mind trying the original Newcastle Brown Ale to see whether it was any good.
I think for me as well, Tetley's on cask. That was one of the first cask regular beers I had when I was part of the pub quiz team, and the pubs had Tetley's cask, and I did fall in love with Tetley's cask. Yeah. And to see what it is now is just a travesty. A bit like Bodies, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, and I can actually still remember drinking Bodies a good few years ago, and it's still tasting good, and actually trying it now, and it does taste very, very different to what it tasted even just a few years ago. That seems to be a recipe that's constantly changing.
Yeah, not the same beer by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah. So if we go back to talking about this actual, for all intents and purposes, what is a branding exercise? Yeah. They've bought a brand, they're going to put it on a new beer, and they're hoping that might trigger some nostalgia in people. Does kind of bring us on to the two beers that we've chosen to drink tonight, because I think they are examples of when branding goes right, sort of thing. So the first one that we tried earlier on was the Adnams dry hop lager, which we both drained very, very quickly without too much of a passing comment, because it's very, very drinkable. Now comes in a lovely little can. But we often cite Adnams as being one of the big breweries in the UK that have got the craft, for want of a better phrase, arm of their stuff right, and they've got the branding right with it.
Definitely, they've nailed it on both sides. I mean, that when I did my Golden Pints last year for the first time, Adnams got my Brewery of the Year on that reason alone. Yeah, because their cask range, I think, is up there with the best, and is truly consistent most of the time. And the Jack brand, while they haven't gone for your massive West Coast lip-smacking puckering up of hops, all of the beers that have been brought out are in contrast to their cask range.
Yeah, absolutely.
Probably the most, on the cask range, you could probably say Ghost Ship is probably one which, if it was a brand new brewery, they could have labelled as a craft beer. Mm-hmm. But on the actual, the beers, the Mosaic, single hop, not many cask brewers have nailed their single hop varieties in the established world. The dry hop lager, I mean, it is a really drinkable lager. Like I said, I prefer it on keg. And the other ones they brought out. So yeah, I would say Adnams have got both feet in the camp.
Yeah, and I think some of them have been historical brews as well. Yeah. They've gone back into their brewing books and they've rebrewed again. For me, what was interesting about it was when they first launched it, they tried to launch it as a separate brand. They tried to launch it as Jack brand. Yeah. And it was interesting that within about 6 months they had pulled that back, and it still features on the labelling. Yeah. And that does go way back to their early days.
Well, that's on the side of the brewery wall, isn't it? In Southwold as well. Yeah. The Jack brand.
But the way that they pulled it back into their core brand, I think they've done it really, really well. And they're not trying to pretend that it's anything else. It's just different beer that they brew for a different market.
Yeah, and we've had rebranding, and we've had I think I mentioned it a couple of weeks ago with some of the Green King beers that got rebranded from their 500ml bottles down to their crafty 330s. Yeah. That's just the rebranding exercise. That's just marketing. That's advertising. It's no new beers. Mm-hmm. Even some of the beers which I think they did for Tesco under their Metropolis label again. Were they brand new beers? There was a lot of similarities with some of their other beers. Yeah. So I think Adnams again. The marketing is nice. It feels modern. Their Jack brand range, but it's modern, but with somehow still managing to have a traditional twist in it.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that's what they do really, really well. And that brings us on to the second beer that we're going to drink this evening. So, as part of this kind of branding discussion, I thought it would be interesting to dig into a bottle of Pilsner Urquell.
Okay, I'm always up for that.
Cheers.
Cheers. I could probably pretty much drain that if I...
It's really tasty, isn't it?
Yeah, you always get a bit more of a malt feel with the Pilsner.
There's a lovely malt feel to it, isn't there? And it's such a well balanced finish as well. It's lovely malt and biscuits coming through on the end. There's a little bit of lemon in there for me, and it just finishes so clean as well.
Yeah, and again, it keeps a nice thin head, but it's not gassy, and that's one of the things about when you do have the Pilsner in the pubs, it's not gassy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I love a fresh Pilsner Urquell from a tank,
which they're getting out to a lot of places. It's in the Nicholson's pubs as well now.
Is it?
Yeah.
And I think
the one 200 metres from my office.
Marvellous. new lunchtime halt for you then. And I think for me that's where it comes back to this kind of branding thing, because Pilsner Urquell are owned by SAB Miller, who are about to become part of AB InBev.
Yep.
But they are still loved and revered by many beer drinkers, ourselves included.
Yep.
And I know that a lot of people have said that, you know, SAB Miller have looked after the brand, interesting words, very, very well since they've had it. But I do think I'd go one step further than that and actually say what they've done with the brand in a time where we've seen so much more variety in beer becoming available, different styles of beer, craft beer booming, if you want to use that phrase. They've managed to keep Pilsner Urquell in people's consciousness.
Yeah, I think they've done it really well, actually.
Yeah.
And also by making it feel that you are drinking something that has been around a while. And although I guess not everyone would know that it's owned by SAB Miller, and might even care even less that it's owned by SAB Miller. But it's again, if I go into a pub and I'm a bit more limited on choice, it could be one of the bars near me and work in the city, then Pilsner would be one I'd go for, because it's not just going to be a cold, gassy, fizzy lager. I would go for it, and I think they've done really well. And the whole tank fresh, it's been brilliant. It's
genius, isn't it? Because there's a bit of theatre about that as well. I mean,
it looks lovely. The brass tanks.
Yeah, you walk into anywhere and there's, especially if you're into one of the draft houses, there's big signs up telling you how old the beer is as well, and when it was tapped and when it arrived, and you know it is, and those brass tanks are beautiful, and the way it pours and the glasses and everything about it. For me, it's a real example of somebody that's taken a brand, not tried to be clever with it, not tried to do anything different with it, and just literally said, you know what, we're actually going to take this back to its heritage. We're going to tell that story, and you know they've employed people to tell that story. They've employed a lot of well-known bloggers to go out to. Yeah,
we know a few have been out there, and they've come back raving about it and written some really well put together articles as well.
Yeah,
it looks lovely, and also they've done they've done it where they've had the beer out the wooden barrel as well.
Yes,
they've done that. They've gone around doing releases of that. I think they've done what I think SAB Miller have done, and the people who work for them, is they've enhanced what they've got. For me, I'm not noticing that the beer is any different. If it's been tweaked, it's bypassed me. Unlike some other beers which the big brands have taken over, which have been well spoken about at times on Twitter and in blogs, where people have said this really isn't the same beer anymore. I've never really sensed that with Pilsner Urquell. There seems to be a real love for it in the beer world. And then if you take a step outside of the beer world, which we exist in, if I had Pilsner Urquell and offered someone Pilsner Urquell, I don't think someone would say, "Oh, Martin's been all craft on me." No. It's a brand they know. Yeah, you can be in both sides with this one.
You can, and it's a really enjoyable beer. And I think, in summary, I think I don't imagine for a minute that the entrepreneurs that own the brand Hofmeister will be listening to what we're saying. But if you want to play around with a brand, just look after it and do something that's worthy of that brand. Because for me, this is the epitome of that. It's Pilsner Urquell is, big beer owns this, but they've looked after it and they've managed to still make it revered in the beer community.
Yeah, and if you think that your beer is going to be good enough, then you don't need to bring an old beer out of retirement, as in its brand name.
Yeah, I mean, just going back to that original, if there's a fourth generation Bavarian brewery brewing beer, why can't we just have their name on the label?
Yeah.
Why do we need to bring back George
Have the name of the forest, and we'll get Steve to read it out
yeah,
again.
try and pronounce it every week. Okay, so mate, what have you got in the blog roundup for this week?
The blog roundup has all been about Indie Man, and that could have been because I was drinking shit beer since then, and I felt all nostalgic for just over a week ago or so. So what we've got is we've got a few blogs. Mark Johnson did a very nice follow-up to his pre-Indie Man postings, with one which compared his experience to the build-up to Glastonbury for him, and also a lot of pictures of people beside the Fish Mosaic. So if you remember to hashtag Fish Mosaic, there's a good chance your picture has turned up in Mark Johnson's post. There was also a good one, which I really actually enjoyed the way this one was done. Was done it as an awards. There was from Yes Ale, did it as the Indie Man Beer Convention Awards 16, a silly little post. And I thought it was quite a nice little way of going through it actually, because it really did extenuate all the positives about everything by doing it that way. And lastly, about on the same subject, James Beeson did again a really nice blog about it. Again, all about the positives. I mean, this guy really did enjoy his experience, despite the fact that he did leave it quite late to manage to get hold of his tickets, as he pointed out, having forgotten when they went on general release. I'm assuming he won't make that mistake again. So yeah, it was all about the Indie Man blogs for me this week.
Yeah, and I think you're right. There's been a lot of Indie Man blogs. They're just probably a few of the many that are out there now. But they'll all be linked through to in the show notes if you want to go and have a read of those. So, who's won the Prizeless Prize this week? It can't be me, because I don't think I've actually put a single picture on Instagram for quite a while now.
No, well, there's 4 in the running. One from South via Northwest, where he had a rather nice picture of 3 of the beers he tried from the Rainbow Beer Project. We had a very colourful Brixton birthday bottle on the counter at Hopsburn and Black. One from Clayton Laird called A World Without Dave, which obviously, as our mascot, is not worth thinking about.
Yeah, well, Dave's been quiet. We're not seeing any pictures of Dave recently.
Well, maybe he's on a post-Indie Man downer as well.
You can just imagine what that looks like.
But the winner is from Million Bevs. It is a very nice picture of the Magic Rock tap room.
I thought I recognised that place.
Well, you would. I'm surprised she actually got a picture of you in it, to be honest. But it's basically the Magic Rock brewery tab, but it's got no one in it. So it's as it's set up before it opens, no one in it. It looks really nice and just reminds me that I need to go back again soon. And so that's the winner. The big box of nothing will be on its way.
Excellent. And if you want to have a go at winning the big box of nothing, just make sure you put your picture up on Instagram, use the hashtag cheers guys, and if it's the one that catches Martin's eye, that big box of nothing will be heading its way to you. Look out for the Hopinions polls every week to get involved in our discussions. We'll be talking more Hopinions soon, but in the meantime you can find us at the Beer O'Clock Show on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook. You can also find me on Untapped at Beer Show Steve. Martin, where can people find you?
Untapped, Instagram, Twitter, Beer is the Answer, and you'll find my musings about beer and probably a few other things as well now and again.
Oh, I think you're quite humble in saying that you did actually write an Indie Man post as well.
Yeah, I did. Sorry,
so
yeah.
It is worth checking that out because it does tie in nicely to last week's show as well. Next week we are going to be trying something a little bit different. So we have got there'll be 3 polls running next week. We're going to run a poll on Sunday, Monday and Tuesday, and they will all tie into a very special show that we'll be recording next week for you. We're keeping that purposely secret at the moment, because we don't want anybody's views tainted.
Yeah, I think that's right. We want some honest opinions without everyone knowing what's going to be following up, and I think we'll get some really good feedback off the base of the questions. People might start to guess. Yeah,
but hopefully we'll be able to bring you a show that will bring all of that together for you next week. In the meantime, we're pleased to say that Opinions are still able to bring you discounts from Ales by Mail, beer merchants, eBrew and Hot Burns and Black. Check out beeroclockshow.co.uk/discounts for more details. So, until next week, cheers, folks.
Cheers.
Life in the Bavarian forest was boring. The big event was me and Ronnie Rabbit watching a leaf fall down.
A leaf? I saw a leaf!
Hey. Then one day I discovered Hofmeister lager with a picture of my grandpa on it. It had a cool cut on the back of the throat that was so good I decided to leave the forest. And so I found companionship. Trouble 20, bought to finish you to chalk. I found the left-hand screw to kiss onto the pink. I found more companionship. But most of all, I found Hofmeister on draft. The moral is, if you want poetry, stand and stare. But if you want great lager, follow the bear. Hey, Hofmeister, a great lager, follow the bear.